from wherever and whenever you join us today, you are welcome to this Baja 4 worship service. It is a joint effort of the 4 Unitarian Universalist congregations of Southeast Arizona. These include Borderlands UU of Amado, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson from the east side, and Mountain Vista UU in the northwest of Tucson, and Sky Island UU in Sierra Vista. This is a collaborative worship, which means we bring to it a diversity of skills, gifts, perspective, and we have created a covenant which helps us to listen compassionately and respectfully to each other and to promise to stay open to learning, to growth in this virtual worship world still so new to us. But we recognize that many of our relationships in this world today are not in good shape. The explosive events that happened in Washington, D.C. earlier this month show just how broken our social contracts are. And so for many months, this is the reason we have started our worship by acknowledging that the land we inhabit was stolen from the Pasquayaqui, the O'odham and Opata people, the Chiricahua Apache. But as Riley said so well last week, if you repeat something frequently, but don't engage those words, they can lose meaning. And if we were to truly engage our land acknowledgement, it would cause us to grow and learn, reach out to Indigenous peoples of this area to find out how they would have us relate to them. How can we create a sacred guide to right relationship with them? How can we make a covenant? In the months and weeks and years ahead, we will work on that and tweak it. Because all of our relationships are constantly changing, we have to work on our covenants as well. Creating, tending, ending, and renewing covenant is an ongoing process. This Sunday's worship concludes our arc of exploring covenant, but we will never stop benefiting from good ones. And so we need to end ones that no longer serve us, renew ones that do. And whether we end or revitalize, ceremony helps us mark what's important about them, helps make them deeper, more profound, have more impact on our lives. So come, explore with us the many ways everyday and not so frequent rituals help us see and shape the most important covenants of our lives.
I light our chalice, the symbol of our shared Unitarian Universalist faith, with this reading from Katie Gelfand, entitled "The End is the Beginning." We call forth the life of our faith by igniting our chalice. This spark of our new beginnings invites us into a sacred space to reflect where we have been and where we are going. Even knowing that this particular flame will intentionally end with our ritual extinguishing, we fear not its end. For we know, with brave hearts, that from every ending of our lives, we are sent forth to make a new beginning.
Class unite as equal persons in the search for beauty, truth, and
the sacred torch of truth has lit by inspiration taught.
Where is our Holy One? A mighty host respond. The people rise in every land to break the captive's bond.
Where is our holy land?
Within the human soul, wherever free minds truly seek with character the goal.
Where is our paradise? In aspiration's sight, wherein we hope to see arise 10,000 years of right.
We are surrounded by so many small and continual covenants. When I get my driver's license, I covenant to stay on the right-hand side of the yellow line on the road. When I borrow one, then I covenant to return my library book. My credit card allows me to covenant that I have or will have money to pay for something later. Some covenants are ongoing and some are renewed regularly. One covenant that we are all engaging in is the practice of wearing a mask. We agree to each do our part to keep ourselves and others safe from viral infection. When I put on my mask, sometimes I think to myself, I'm tired of this. I don't want to do it. But then I do, because whatever grief or frustrations I might feel about this present moment, I also recognize the future benefits of following through on wearing a mask. Let's take a moment to consider what it would mean to be intentional about this covenant of social care when wearing a mask. What does our mask teach us about how we participate in covenant? We are in a moment as a society of reviewing and hopefully rewriting our social contracts that have been inadequate for so many people for so long. We are given a clear view through the tangible experience of these masks about what it could be like for all of us to take shared responsibility. I want to live in a world where we are each responsible for co-creating greater safety for everyone. I invite you to consider this commitment to mutual care when you wear a mask. This is our tangible social covenant. This practice teaches us the complexity of covenant. We may feel afraid of the harm we or our loved ones might experience if we got sick. We may feel mad because someone else is choosing not to wear their mask or not to wear it appropriately. Simultaneously, we may feel inspired to see so many people who are actively practicing this covenant of care. Covenant is not just logistical, it is also emotional and aspirational. When these masks are no longer needful, when we find that there are other ways to commit to this practice of mutual care, it will not be because this covenant is over. It will be time to renew this covenant and engage with those other tangible actions that keep our commitment alive.
I was raised Unitarian Universalist, and there are some UU things that are just burned and seared into my brain. There's one thing that we used to read every Sunday when I was a child. Number 471. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. Arranged by L. Griswold Williams. I read that as a child most Sundays. And when I became a young adult, my congregation was actually served by Reverend Matthew Crary. And during that time, our music director, Steve Lawless, wrote a song that was also kind of like a covenant song that we would sing almost every Sunday. And I remember watching Matthew at the pulpit, and when we'd sing, there was always a carefully timed kind of fist bump in the air for this kind of UU football fight song. I'm going to sing just a little part of it for you. There is love in abundance. There is love and a search for truth. There is love and a sense of justice. Yeah, beneath every UU roof. Seared into my brain. At Mountain Vista, we also have a covenant song. The covenant song was made after a covenant was worked and reworked by the community a few years ago, and the minister and the music director wrote a musical version that could be sung every Sunday. And those words could be used to guide the community when things felt unclear or hard. I'm going to read to you the lyrics of the Mountain Vista covenant song. With love as our guide, we covenant to welcome the stranger, encourage one another, to honor diversity, and ask questions lovingly. With love as our guide, we covenant to seek comprehension. Together we listen, trusting in you and me when our hearts beat differently. With love as our guide, we covenant to keep faith and remain as we begin again, as we light our chalice fire. To this we aspire. Now, if you do anything week after week, if you say anything often enough, it can begin to become rote. The thing that we carefully chisel and work on that has meaning for us at some point just feels engraved in our heads. And we kind of check it off like we've done it. So how do we come fresh to long-standing promises that we make? One practice I want to share with you is Lectio Divina from the Catholic tradition. This is a practice where a person can come back to a text or scripture and let the text speak to them fresh, and let the spirit of the text come to them with a sense of newness. There's 4 steps in the traditional practice. In that practice, the first step is to read the text really slowly. So you read it with curiosity, as if you've never read it before, letting it really seep in, like how you watch a movie the first time or read a book for the first time, awestruck by what you're reading. The second move is to meditate, to let your eyes focus on something. You read the passage slowly again, and you notice if a particular word or particular phrase kind of calls to you. The third move is to pray. So you read the text again, but you read it like a prayer. Or if you don't pray, you might read it like the way you would make a kind of promise to someone else, with intention. And then the fourth move is contemplation. That's when you actually read the text again, and you read it as if it's kind of a prayer back to you, or a promise made back to you that you take into your own life. Now, I have a UU version of this that's a little bit shorter, and my version goes something like this. I read the text as if I've never read it before, with curiosity and slowness, And I do what you do. You practice looking at one phrase or one word and noticing if your heart is drawn to that phrase. And then I stop and I ask myself, how do these words speak to my life right now? And then I wait. I wait for a response from my own heart. Then I ask myself, is there a way that I can honor these words in my life today or this week? Sometimes I can honor it by being creative. Maybe I actually need to attend to a relationship or follow through on a promise. Maybe I need to take time out, visit a sacred space in the mountains or at the Saguaro National Park, or be more present with my daughter. In this way, slowly, phrase by phrase and word by word, I renew my commitment to the world. So let's practice it. On the screen, I'm going to have the words from the Mountain Vista Covenant song, and we'll sit together in reflection for just a few moments as you read it. Notice what word or phrase speaks to you and your life right now, and if there's something that is calling you to take action to honor the words in your life and relationships. May you and your covenants be renewed, and may we renew these covenants in community.
With love as our guide, we covenant to welcome the stranger, encourage one another, to honor diversity, and ask questions lovingly. With love as our guide, we covenant to seek comprehension. Together we listen, trusting in you and me when our hearts beat differently. With love as our guide, we covenant to keep faith and remain as we begin again. As we light our chalice fire to this we aspire as we light our chalice fire. To this we aspire.
So today I want to talk about Peru. This is South America. Here's Peru, the current capital of Lima. However, the land that we call Peru has been inhabited for quite a long time. People believe the earliest people arrived there around 15,000 years ago. One of the most important Peruvian cultures was the Inca, who lived in Peru about 600 years ago. The capital, Cusco, is a major city still today. They also built Machu Picchu, a famous and mysterious ancient city in the Andes. They thrived for centuries before being colonized and decimated by the Spanish in the 1500s. The second highest mountain range in the world runs through Peru. These peaks, called the Andes, are so tall and foreboding that the ancient Inca people thought they were gods. However, it is the construction of the Inca Road that stands as one of the most monumental engineering achievements in history. A network more than 20,000 miles long, crossing mountains and tropical lowlands, rivers and deserts, the Great Inca Road linked Cusco, the capital, and the spiritual center of the Inca world, to the farthest reaches of its empire. And one of the most important features of this road is the bridges that the Inca constructed, the likes of which weren't seen in Europe for at least 200 years. The Inca built more than 200 of these bridges across gorges and other previously impassable barriers. Some of them were at least 150 feet long and could reportedly accommodate 3 people walking across. What's amazing, though, is that although they are anchored by permanent stone abutments, which you'll see soon, the bridges themselves had to be replaced roughly every year. This bridge in Peru is rebuilt every year using traditional Inca engineering techniques by the local communities on either side of the canyon. This bridge has been continually rebuilt in the same location since the time of the Inca. The entire bridge is built in only 3 days. To construct the bridge, grass is harvested and then prepared to be woven into large cables, beginning with small cord, which is twisted together from the local grass. These cords are then twisted to form a larger rope, and the ropes are braided to create the main cable. Up on the highway, the community works together to pull these ropes and stretch them out. These ropes are then twisted and woven. Each rope is made from 30 of the small cords, and then 3 of these ropes are braided to form the cables that will support the bridge. After more stretching, the cables are then carried down to where the bridge will be installed. The old bridge is used to run the first cable across for what will become the new bridge, and then the old bridge is cut down and it falls into the water and is washed away by the river. All day long, the community pulls on the new cables to prepare them for the bridge. These supporting cables are anchored to the stone abutments on either side of the canyon. So why, in this final part of our series on covenant, would we travel to Peru and see this ancient building process? Well, for one, it tells us that each person is vitally important to the success of the project. From the harvest to the weaving to the final knot, each person's contributions determine whether the project will be successful or not. Knowing this, each person did their part as best they could, and they relied on everyone else to do their best too. The other thing that I think is significant about these bridges is that they would need to be replaced every year or year and a half. Today, the community holds an annual festival for reweaving the bridge. They make it an intention to come together as a community to recreate the bridge and let go of the old one. Unlike our bridges today, which we hope will stay up indefinitely, the ancient Incas and the current people who maintain this tradition know that they're going to have to reweave their bridge every year. What if we thought about our covenants more like Inca bridges and less like modern day ones? What if we planned to come together in community and repair or replace them regularly? Would we trust that the covenant we hold would hold our weights? Would we move more confidently across them knowing they were safe and in good repair? Would we all do our parts to help reweave them? Maybe we should find out.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
This is a time of uncertainty. As Reverend Bethany said 2 weeks ago, it's as if we're moving from one trapeze to the next, and we're mid-air, not sure yet what the new trapeze will look like. It's a time that's unsettling, but full of the possibility of change and creativity. So why, in this uncertain time, do I think it's important to speak of rituals of ending and beginning relationship? Why would I speak of noting this change in covenant when we're so up in the air? Because of course our relationships change all the time, and it's important to note how our connection to each other is shifting. Rabbi Edwin Friedman connects the interlocking networks of church and family and denomination and applies systems theory to them, talking about the importance of individuals noting that they are separate, of disentangling so that they can see each other more clearly. And when there's an ending, it can be really healing to disentangle, to see the things we may have done to hurt each other, to note the things we have done well, but to really see each other in the process. And once you remove entanglements, the remaining ties can be mutual regard and love. Aren't those the best? When people leave churches and we can give them a public farewell, often they feel more comfortable returning to funerals and fairs in future. When people leave quietly, without a goodbye, a friend of mine who is a minister has found a solution. He brings paper and pen and crayon and glitter to the social hour and invites people of all ages to create a card and sign it. And this way the church says goodbye and it's sent to the person, so they're also released. If there is no forwarding address, at least the church has let go. And I know that Unitarian Universalists are very good at ceremonies of goodbye and renewal. You're good at noting the beginning and ending of worship and meetings by lighting and extinguishing a chalice. And when a pastor leaves, you have ceremonies to release them. In one such ceremony, I discovered that a church reiterated the promises they had made at the beginning with the minister during their installation and bring them up again at the farewell, saying, some of these we've done well, some not so well. Let us say goodbye well. Another church gives back to the minister gifts that minister gave the church. You have given us pastoral care. We now give it back to you so that you may bring it to whatever congregation or gathering you choose in future. There's a moment of reverence and mutual regard that allows for a healthy new beginning. And so often, endings can be beginnings. So a funeral that gathers a family from all over a country can be a time for healing rifts that untended could go on and hurt a family for generations. And haven't you seen beginnings that are also endings? We have these commencement ceremonies for high school and college, and yet, while we're noting the beginning of a new life, we're deeply aware that we might be leaving that building, that school, for the very last time. UUs are also good at renewal ceremonies. Before the pandemic, many churches had a fall ceremony when people came back who'd been away over the summer, and together they would do a water communion. You would bring water from wherever you had been as a way to say, I've been away, I may have been changed, I'm my own individual, but now I'm coming together and pooling this with all of you. At Sky Island, we would say our covenant of right relations again. But as Riley said earlier, if you do not engage with words that you repeat frequently, they can lose meaning. So how can we bring meaning to those covenants? The UU minister, Reverend Kathleen McTeague, says that ritual requires intention, attention, and repetition. So if you repeat words without bringing attention and intention to why you're doing it, they will fall flat. But if you engage them in new creative ways, you can take them in and give them more meaning. That's why I'm grateful for Reverend Sam's earlier Lectio Divina with a covenant of MVUU. Lectio Divina, as you heard, will read a text 4 times and listen in 4 different ways. Casper ter Kuile takes often the old techniques of religion and applies it in new ways for people who may not be religious, but spiritual, seeking to be surprised by things we can't control, by a deepening of connection. And so he says, you can use Lectio Divina to read a text, and there's several other possibilities. I first learned of him by listening to his wonderful podcast, Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, which he began in 2016 with fellow Harvard Divinity School graduate Vanessa Zoltan. They will take a chapter of Harry Potter, read it through a theme like violence or forgiveness, and in the process, not only does that Harry Potter chapter become more meaningful, but your life opens up to you. He also, in addition to Lectio Divina, which you can use on any meaningful text or portrait, painting, piece of music, he also suggests St. Ignatius' imagination, which is to place yourself in a character in a story. I do this with dreams. I'll put myself in each character present in a dream, and soon the dream will take life. As Turkile says, it will gain color. You will smell. You'll know what you're wearing. It will come alive inside you. And Turkile says the importance in our lives is not to consider whether a place is profane or sacred, but to look for the difference between shallow and deep. And we can go deeper, whether it's at the gym, whether it's at a maker studio, with ritual that brings us together and allows for the unexpected. Last week, we saw a comforting repetition with intention and attention paid at a national event that was healing for all of us. The repetition was, as has happened in the past, past presidents of both parties sat together to acknowledge the passing of the baton of the government. And the vice president of one party welcomed the vice president and president of another party into power. This was a way of saying to the entire country, our democracy might have been threatened, but this process will go on as it has before and will into the future. And a young woman spoke up, and through her poem, The Hill We Climb, she brought many sacred American texts to this time to shape our connections in better ways. So she connected us to the Bible. In the very beginning, Amanda Gorman, in her poem, The Hill We Climb, writes, when day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast, which of course refers to the story of Noah, swallowed up inside a whale for several days. And just by standing there, she reminds us of at least two past African-American figures who spoke publicly in Washington, D.C. But she also quotes the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963 and the poet Maya Angelou, who read at Bill Clinton's inauguration in 1993. She actually echoes their words. All three want to pour goodness out far and wide. King says, so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. And he lists hilltops and mountains from all over the country where he wants freedom to be present. In On the Pulse of Morning, Maya Angelou wants to pour out goodness on people. There is a true yearning to respond to the singing river and the wise rock, to say to the Asian, the Hispanic, the Jew, the African, the Native American, the Sioux. She wants to welcome many different people to a new morning. And Gorman herself writes, we will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast. We will rise from the lake-skimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile and recover, and every known nook of our nation, and every corner called our country, our people diverse and beautiful will emerge, battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. All three, King, Angelo, and Gorman, connect to history and offer a new dream. We remember what Martin Luther King said about, I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And Maya Angelou says, lift up your faces. You have a piercing need for this bright morning dawning for you. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. And Gorman says, we, the successors of a country and time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of being president, only to find herself reciting for one. Of history, she says, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption we feared at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we find the power to author a new chapter. She connects us to the past, to the ancestors, and she speaks of this present situation using sacred text to help us make sense of the chaos we're in. And she points forward, not giving us a clear shape to that trapeze we are reaching for, but allowing us to shape how we connect to one another, how we choose to move forward with grace and intention, how we can claim our own agency. She says, we have seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. She ends, when day comes, we will step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. We needed that ceremony of ending and beginning, and Amanda Gorman brought us through. The ceremony itself helped us to understand how we want to relate, that it is possible for us to remake this social contract and relive into our future. The ceremony itself predicted our way forward. So let us claim our agency. Let us think of the many rituals of ending and beginning we might want to intentionally do, even in a time of uncertainty. I'm thinking about what will happen when we go back into our church buildings. We will be different. We will mark an ending of the pandemic and the way it was before the pandemic. We may take off our masks, but we will probably celebrate and say our covenants, hopefully in new and engaged ways. And I hope that whether or not we do a water ceremony, I will bring in a vial of words, precious words, gleamed from my Baja 4 worship committee. Make space for relationship and value the process of worship, creation over the product. Always be in beta, take risks and ask questions. Stay connected to the spirit within and the spirit among in our working together. If I start saying that at Sky Island, I wonder if they'd pause and say, but that's not on the paper. That's not our covenant of right relations. I'm glad that our covenant of right relations are on the wall as a banner, because when people enter the church for other purposes, they read them and often come back. but I'm glad they're not chiseled in stone, because our covenants, the guide to our connections to one another, always need to be flexible, to be tweaked, to be made new. So churches, just like bridges, may want to rebuild their covenant together each year, at least each decade, maybe every 15. And I invite you to look as Riley invites us to everyday covenants we may not have made out loud, to the masks we wear as a sign that we care for one another. We may take away those tangible signs of our covenant of care, but there are new ones I hope we keep as we move forward. Sky Islanders now call each other all the time and discover that the people who haven't shown up in Zoom have been calling other people who've been calling other people. I hope the telephone will remain as a sign of our covenant of care. And I invite you, as I close today, to think of small signs and big that you can use to show to the world that you care about the shape of our social covenant, that you will model a new way of being, caring in the world. And even though it is daunting, take heart from these words from Amanda Gorman. There is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it.
We come from the mountain, living on the mountain, go back to the mountain, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain, go back to the mountain, turn the world around.
We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around.
Come from the fire, living in the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the fire, living in the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around.
We come from the breezes, living in the breezes, go back to the breezes, turn the world around. We come from the breezes, living in the breezes, go back to the breezes, turn the world around.
We come from the Spirit, living in the Spirit, go back to the Spirit, turn the world around. We come from the Spirit, living in the Spirit, go back to the Spirit, turn the world around, turn the world around, turn the world around.
Well, welcome everyone. I want to introduce you to my wonderful white religious professionals pod with whom I have been in conversation this fall doing Within, and who are willing to speak today about why they might sign up for Within, the second part, in the spring. So thank you all. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Stacy, and thank you, Janine, for speaking up.
So hi, I'm Stacy from Mountain Vista. The content of the Beloved Conversation lessons really resonated with me, and many applied directly to my life. They have answered some of the important questions I've wondered most of my life. It gives me answers to why I think and do some of the things that I do. I've learned to be more gracious with myself and others. I have learned about where my discomfort comes from and to be okay with it, and so much more. This work is never over, so I'm really looking forward to the next session. I'm not sure what it holds, but I would love to know more about how to convey these ideas and content to my children and how to raise more racially conscious young adults. I've really loved being a part of this beloved community. This course has made me a much better person and mother, for sure.
Who's next?
You are, Mary.
Okay. Well, I intend to sign up for Beloved Conversations in the spring because the fall curriculum has been so enriching to me. It's really helped me to process my internal struggle with white supremacy culture and how to convey that to others and why I think this work is so very important. In our pod, we've talked a lot about our children and how we want this to be a better world for them. In my case, possibly grandchildren. And we've all acknowledged that even though we're not perfect parents, that hopefully our words and our actions will have an impact on their future and other people's future. And the resources in the fall have just been absolutely terrific. I look really forward to the resources that will be presented in the spring curriculum, and the fact that they're available for a whole year makes it even better.
I have really valued doing this with other religious professionals where I can kind of let my hair down and feel safe and just talk about how deeply entrenched the structure of white racism is in this country, how for me it's a constant learning, pulling off layers, realizing how deep into it I am. So I'm really looking forward to continuing that process. I would like to be able to respond when I hear things that are racist, to find new ways to respond in congregations and in groups in a loving but life-opening way maybe for the people I'm with, because it's going to be a constant process. And if we, as you use, adopt the eighth principle of dismantling racism and other oppressions, this is work we're going to have to figure out how to do together. So I really look forward to taking part in the spring session. And I introduced to you our beloved Janine Gelsinger of UU Jazz, who also is on the curriculum committee writing Beloved Conversations. And so she's going to give us a sneak peek. Thank you, Janine.
Thank you so much, Tina and Mary and Stacy. I have had so much fun participating in the Beloved Conversations curriculum with you. Even though I'm part of the curriculum writing team, it's really an amazing experience, and I'm so grateful to be able to go through also as a participant and talk about the work that I still have to do and be with a team of peers in order to do that. The thing for me that makes me excited for spring is that Beloved Conversations is different than a lot of anti-racism curriculum. We're always telling white folks to do your work. And while that is true, and this is work, Beloved Conversations Virtual aims to make it joyful. It is amazing to feel that you're taking steps to freeing yourself from all of the systems of oppression that we as white folks have created. So as we're working towards collective liberation, we're also finding the joy that you feel when you can let go of perfection, or you can let go of fragility, or the letting go of the need to comfort and being able to take risk. Now, because I'm part of the curriculum team, and because the Baja 4 has been one of the highest participations in the whole country for Beloved Conversations, I thought I would bring you a little sneak peek for spring. No one else is getting this, so it's just for you. But some of the lessons that we're working on this spring for Beloved Conversations have themes of unlearning and learning for liberation, faithful resistance, moving at the speed of trust, knowing that I am enough, both and thinking, subjective truth, trusting and valuing collective wisdom, moving into the future, emergent faith, complexity and multiplicity, and imagining joy and celebration. I hope that you'll join us again this spring for Beloved Conversations Virtual.
So again, remember, sign up starting February 1st. The course starts March 15th. If you're interested, if we've piqued your curiosity, speak to your minister or someone else in your church you know who's taken this. Sign up, y'all.
As we close out this series on covenant, I wanted to draw our attention towards a covenant that all of our congregations have in common. In fact, many of our Unitarian Universalist congregations, most of them, have this one covenant in common. And the covenant that I'm talking about is the 7 principles and the 6 sources. This is a covenant. These principles and sources are found in Article 2 of the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. And this section of the bylaw starts, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote," and then the 7 principles follow from there, followed by the 6 sources. This covenant between our congregations was adopted in 1985 at a General Assembly, and the vote to adopt these principles and sources was unanimous. Can you imagine that? 1,000 or more people voted unanimously to adopt these in 1985. And the wisdom of the people who helped us adopt these principles and sources then was that we as an association ought to review and renew the principles and sources every 15 years. And there have been some renewal of these principles and sources since 1985, but just a few things. In 1995, the 6th source was formally added, affirming our inspiration and connection to earth-based spiritualities. And in 2018, the phrase in the principles prophetic men and women was changed to prophetic people. But other than this, there hasn't been significant renewal, review, re-examination of our covenant, this covenant that most Unitarian Universalist congregations share. There was an attempt to renew and review in 2009, but the vote to propose those changes lost by just 13 votes. You remember that our ancestors, our wise elders who successfully helped us adopt these principles and sources in 1985, recommended that we review them and renew them every 15 years. It's been a little while, a little bit longer than 15 years since 1985. But today, in the next few years, you as congregations, we as Unitarian Universalists, will be hearing from the Article 2 Commission. This is a commission who has been charged with helping us, facilitating a renewal and a review of our principles and sources. They are aspiring to help us make our principles and sources reflect the people we want to be. We want to be in 2030 and 2040 and 2050, rather than the people that those of us who are around in 1985 wanted us to be today. The 8th principle, which you'll hear a lot more about next week, as well as in some services to come this spring, is part of the conversation about nudging us towards who we want to be in 2050. This is, as I talked about a few weeks ago, a process of letting go of a covenant we have held onto for a while now, longer than 15 years. And of releasing so that we can hold on, grasp on to something new, something renewed that puts our eyes on the future, who we want to be and who we want to be for our children. With great hope that we will engage in this revision of our principles and sources faithfully, in covenant with one another, and with trust in our collective future. I extinguish our chalice.